Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for Monday, the 15th of June, 2015. Let's take a look at what's going on out there. We have Invest Area 91L in the Gulf of Mexico. And the very latest from the National Hurricane Center tells us, within all of this text in here, that Air Force Hurricane Hunter has been checking out the system, and it lacks a well-defined center, and therefore it is not a tropical cyclone at this time, and so we're not going to have any advisories initiated on it just yet. Taking a look at a visible satellite picture, this is a still shot. What they are alluding to in here is that it's still rather elongated in its pressure field. It has not attained or developed a concentrated area of low pressure around the center just yet. You can see that a little bit better here on the animation of the visible satellite. Overall, a large circulation envelope with this system instead of a well-defined concentrated center. Now, there may be one trying to get going right in here somewhere. That'll be up to the hurricane hunters to determine, and the folks at the National Hurricane Center. The planes will be flying out there pretty regularly, giving us in situ updates, and that's the best way to do it, right? You fly something out there and you go see for yourself what's going on. And a lot of times that can give you a better picture, literally, than looking at it from just satellite and surface observations. So we definitely appreciate and respect the work that the hurricane hunters do for everybody's sake. Now, whatever happens with 91L, the track forecast for it, and remember, this is different computer models for something that has not developed yet, so we don't have a track forecast from the National Hurricane Center for a named system. So we look at the computer model guidance. Some of the models wanting to take it more towards West Texas, the more simple numerical models, I guess you would say, that you can run on a fairly old computer. But the more sophisticated dynamic models are starting to show, and have been showing, I should say it's a continuation of what they've been showing, is in riding up and over this big ridge of high pressure that's sitting over the southeast United States. Now, I'm going to be able to show you that better on some GFS maps in just a minute. But the idea is that it comes in over Texas, maybe near Matagorda Bay, and then areas such as Dallas, up the I-45 corridor, and maybe even into southeast Oklahoma here, could get in on basically a system that is still maintaining itself over land due to the tremendous amount of moisture that is still in the ground that'll be kind of wicked out, if you will, and pulled into this system. So it's not going to weaken as much as it would if it were coming in, say, 2011, when we had Tropical Storm Don come in South Texas, and it literally evaporated before it made it into the coastline. It's a completely different type of setup with the soil moisture content, and so this is going to last a lot longer over land, and it's probably going to look fairly impressive from satellite over land. Now, luckily, the intensity guidance, not suggesting that this will become much more than a moderate tropical storm from these fairly simple statistical hurricane model, the more dynamic models indicating very little strengthening. So this is not going to be, in terms of impact, a major coastal event. Yes, you're going to have rough seas, some overwash and coastal flooding along the usual areas, maybe from Sabine Pass, Holly Beach, down to the Bolivar Peninsula, High Island, Texas, Crystal Beach, those areas. You know, keep an eye on this for the typical onshore flow, any high tide related, astronomical high tide coastal flooding issues. Then, rain and wind, well, if we look at the wind, not much of that. Luckily, maybe some gusts, especially in any thunderstorms that develop, 35, 45 mile per hour winds maybe at the most. Stronger perhaps in a downburst here or there, but that's going to be widely scattered and impossible to predict. But the biggest issue is going to be the rainfall. And if we look at the Gulf of Mexico, the water temperature is running quite a bit above normal, and that is just a tremendous amount of moisture that's going to be available for this to tap into and literally fling it and draw it right into parts of Texas and then up and around this ridge of high pressure, leaving the southeast here completely unscathed. And we can see that on the GFS, the Global Forecast System 500 millibar chart This is up at around 18, 20,000 feet or so in the atmosphere. And let me show you what's what here. This is the outline, easy to draw here, as I just kind of make it easy to pick out, of the large area of high pressure centered over Georgia and the Carolinas. Very, very hot underneath this big dome of dense, warm air. A large area of high pressure. The system, 91L, is represented by this little X down here. Very little vorticity or energy making its way up into the atmosphere. And so you don't see any of these colors showing up. If this was a well-developed hurricane, you would see that. You would see a lot of these yellows and oranges and very dark reds, and that would indicate a lot of energy or spin in the atmosphere moving upwards into the atmosphere through the different layers. Well, we're not seeing that, and that's good news because that shows us that it is not a very strong system. Moving on out into time, this will be valid tomorrow morning, so here's Tuesday morning. Again, the outline of this very strong ridge of high pressure. Here's our little area, 91L, maybe Bill at that time, headed towards the Texas coastline, and again with it a lot of rainfall, onshore flow, some coastal flooding issues as I mentioned, especially since it's going to be coming perpendicular at the coast. These areas in this right front quadrant over here would receive that onshore flow and probably a bulk of the moisture. Now we're sitting out at 36 hours, so this is valid tomorrow night, and you see the ridge of high pressure holding strong over the southeast United States, and then the stream flow around it is very simple to pick out, and so the system will come inland between Houston and Corpus Christi, it looks like, and so that finally by 72 hours it is stretched out. It's becoming a little bit more vigorous with its upper level influence. You know, it's transitioning from a tropical system into one that's more mid-latitude based, so it's going to have more energy associated with it over land, mind you, drawing that moisture in from all that heavy rain. And so you folks here along this path, you're going to get a lot of rainfall from this, and then that shows up very, very well here on the Weather Prediction Center's 5-day quantitative precipitation forecast. So when you add it all up over the next 5 days, check it out. A good part of Texas going to be inundated all the way up the I-45 corridor, maybe over to Dallas, maybe as far west as Oklahoma City, and then coming around through Arkansas, extreme southeast Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, through Pennsylvania, and maybe exiting somewhere in the northeast corridor with some heavy rain by day 5. So it is amazing to me. I mean, it has to marvel you. I mean, really, a tropical system, and we know this, originating down here, comes all the way up and around this big ridge of high pressure and can influence literally tens of millions of people with very heavy rain, the possibility of severe weather once these get over land and you get the daytime heating. This is going to be something that we're going to be tracking for the next several days, whether or not it gets a name and no matter how strong it gets. So very interesting weather, even though it's not a hurricane. This shows you the impact from even a weak tropical system, and it's going to affect a lot of people in the United States. Before I jump off of here, let's take a look at Carlos real quick. In the Eastern Pacific, some good news with Carlos. First of all, it's just, quote unquote, a tropical storm. Winds are down to 70 miles per hour. The 5-day forecast from the Hurricane Center, more good news in that it's not forecast to become a hurricane again, maybe briefly at one point, but that's going to be tough because, as I show you the satellite picture here, check this out. Carlos has basically sat over the same area of Eastern Pacific water for so long that it's upwelled underneath itself. So here's the satellite animation right here. Yeah, that's Carlos. Doesn't look very impressive at all. Still going to bring a lot of moisture and rainfall to parts of the Mexican coastline and just inland a ways, but overall the impact going to be fairly minimal. And it might become a hurricane again, but it's not looking good for Carlos to do much more than that. So anybody vacationing now or hoping to go to the vacation areas of Mexico, this will eventually clear the pattern, and luckily we're going to be getting into a negative phase of the MJO, basically meaning that we're going to be in a period of time for a couple of weeks where we shouldn't see any more tropical development in the Eastern Pacific. And that's good news because it's been pretty active there since the get-go. All right, well, that's it from me for today. Again, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, and of course, always a privilege and an honor to do these videos for you to enjoy and hopefully learn from on Hurricane Pro in HD. I'll keep up with what's going on with 91L in the Gulf, and I'll have another video blog for you tomorrow.